AITA for walking away after my girlfriend said I was just a friend to impress another guy? My name is Andrew. I'm 27 years old, and I work as a manager at a major retail store. It's not the most glamorous job, but thanks to it, I've managed to build some real stability in my life. A couple of years ago, I was able to buy my own house. It's nothing fancy, just a modest starter home in a decent suburb, but it's spacious, comfortable, and well located. In short, it's my place, my space. Vanessa moved in with me after we had been dating for about a year. At that time, it felt right, like the natural next step for us. She had just graduated with her BFA in drama and was full of hope, convinced that sooner or later her acting career was going to take off. But things didn't pan out the way she'd imagined. She would land small parts from time to time, maybe every 3 or 4 months, but nothing stable or with a decent paycheck. So, most of the time, she was at home, running lines, filming self-tapes for auditions, or just waiting for opportunities that rarely came. I covered practically everything: the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, and even our date nights. I never threw it in her face directly, but as time went on, I started to feel like something was off. It wasn't just about the money, it was more about the attitude that came with the situation. Vanessa needed constant attention. She thrived on feeling desired and admired, as if she always needed an audience. At first, I wrote it off as part of her artistic personality, something you'd expect from someone who makes a living through self-expression. However, slowly, I began to notice certain patterns. She liked to flirt, though never in a way that was overtly obvious. It was subtle, just enough that if I brought it up, I would sound like I was overreacting. She'd make ambiguous comments, laugh a little too eagerly, and maintain a physical closeness that could always be justified as friendly. And every time I tried to mention it, she had a defense ready. "Are you being serious, Andrew? This is just who I am." For a long time, I believed her, partly because it was easier to accept her version than to confront the idea that something was fundamentally wrong between us. Our problems were never loud or dramatic. There were no shouting matches or big scenes. It was something quieter, more draining. It was an accumulation of small details, uncomfortable comments, and behaviors that didn't sit right with me, but were never quite enough to justify a breakup. I vividly remember something that happened about a month before that night. We had gone out with some people from her acting class. I never fully fit in with that crowd, but I always made an effort to be social. In that group was a guy named Marcus. From the moment we got there, I noticed Vanessa acted differently around him. She leaned in closer when she spoke to him. Her laughter was more enthusiastic than usual, and she would lightly touch his arm every time he said something funny. It wasn't anything outrageous, but it definitely wasn't what I would consider normal, either. At one point, Marcus told her that she had a very powerful stage presence, that it was clear she was going to make it big. Then he added something else, implying that her physical attributes were also a big part of her appeal, and as he said it, his eyes lingered in a way that wasn't subtle. It wasn't an innocent compliment. It had a very clear intention behind it. I stood there, waiting to see how she would react. Vanessa just smiled. "Thank you. I do my best not to go unnoticed." She didn't set a boundary, didn't shift her tone, and just carried on as if nothing had happened. Later that night, when we got home, I told her it had made me uncomfortable. "Seriously?" she replied, her voice already tinged with exhaustion. "We're doing this again." "It's not again. I'm just saying you could be a little clearer in those situations." She sighed as if I were the problem. "Andrew, not everything is about you. Not everything is a threat. If you don't trust me, that's on you." That last part really stuck with me. That's on you. After that, I stopped bringing up things like that. Not because I agreed with her, but because it always ended the same way. I was painted as the insecure one, the one who was exaggerating, the one who saw problems that weren't there. And over time, I actually started to doubt myself. By the time the get-together where everything blew up came around, I was already in a strange headspace. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the clarity to end the relationship. It felt like I was on autopilot. The invitation came from Jenna, a mutual friend. It wasn't a huge party, just a casual get-together at her house with familiar faces, soft music, drinks, and conversation. Vanessa was really eager to go. "A bunch of people from the industry are going to be there," she told me. "It could be a great chance to network." I agreed to go, even though I wasn't particularly thrilled about it, but I also didn't want to start another argument. That day, I noticed something different about her. She took much longer than usual to get ready. She tried on different outfits, swapping combinations over and over, as if she was searching for a very specific look. This one or this one? She asked me several times. I gave her my opinion, but I could tell it wasn't what she was looking for. In the end, she chose a black dress that was more eye-catching than what she would typically wear to a casual event. It wasn't over the top, but it was a little more revealing than her usual style. She paired it with high heels, wore heavier makeup than normal, and put on a fairly strong perfume. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a little spin. "You look nice," I told her. She frowned. "Just nice." "Yeah, you look great." I didn't say anything more. And although she didn't comment, it was obvious she had been hoping for a bigger reaction from me. We arrived at Jenna's house around 10 p.m. The vibe was relaxed, small groups chatting, music playing in the background, all very low-key. We were welcomed warmly, said our hellos, and mingled for a bit. For a moment, everything felt normal, until I saw him. I didn't know who he was, but he stood out without trying. It was more about the way he carried himself, confident, composed, like someone who knows exactly who he is. He was talking to a couple of people when Vanessa spotted him. It was a tiny change in her demeanor, but it was enough for me to notice. That 1-second pause, the extra flicker of attention. "Who's that?" I asked her. "I don't know," she replied quickly. "Probably just a friend of someone's," but she didn't immediately look away. I tried to ignore it and focused on other conversations, trying to keep the mood light. For a while, things went on as usual. We chatted with acquaintances, had a drink, and moved around the house. But every so often, I'd catch Vanessa glancing over at him, until, at some point, he made his way over. It wasn't a coincidence. He walked directly to the group where we were standing, greeted Jenna, exchanged a few words, and then turned his attention to Vanessa. "Hi, I don't think we've met," he said with a relaxed smile. Vanessa replied without missing a beat. "No, I don't believe we have." In that instant, I felt a strange tension build inside me, not so much because of what was happening, but because of how it was happening. I was standing right next to her, yet it was as if I was invisible. The guy extended his hand. "I'm Spencer." Vanessa hesitated for just a fraction of a second before replying. "Vanessa." And that was it. She didn't add that I was her boyfriend. She made no effort to include me in the conversation. She didn't introduce me. She didn't even make a small gesture in my direction. Nothing. She just said her name and left it at that. I stood there quietly, watching the scene unfold, waiting. I was waiting for that natural moment when she would correct the situation. But that moment never came. And that's when something inside me clicked, something I had been avoiding for a long time. It wasn't that I was overreacting. It was that she was actively choosing to behave this way. What happened next just confirmed it all. I felt like I was watching a scene from a movie, like I was no longer a participant in my own life. Spencer and Vanessa started talking with a casual ease that seemed unnatural for two people who had just met. It all flowed too quickly, with a level of familiarity that made me deeply uncomfortable. I was still standing off to the side, silent, hoping that at some point Vanessa would do the right thing and bring me into the conversation, but she never did. Eventually, Spencer finally turned and looked at me. It was the first time he had really acknowledged my presence, and it wasn't a friendly glance. It was one of those looks that sizes you up and, without a word, places you beneath them. Then he spoke. "Hey, can you give us a minute? We're talking." It wasn't just what he said, but the tone he used, as if I were a trivial annoyance, something that just needed to be moved out of the way. Then he looked at Vanessa and, gesturing slightly toward me with his head, asked, "You know this guy?" Everything came down to that one moment. To her answer, I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't want to, but because I truly believed it wasn't necessary. I was convinced Vanessa was about to correct him, that she would say something simple, like, "He's my boyfriend." Something basic. But she didn't. "Yeah," she said. "He's a friend." I felt everything inside me just stop. It wasn't immediate anger, or sadness, or even confusion. It was a strange, hollow feeling, as if all the little things I had ignored for months suddenly slammed into place in my mind. A friend. Spencer reacted as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. "Cool," he said. "So can you give us some space?" I kept my eyes on Vanessa, still waiting, hoping she would take back what she had just said. But instead, she doubled down. Andrew, can you give us a minute? She said it so naturally, without any awkwardness or tension, as if it were a perfectly normal request. That's when I decided to speak. I'm her boyfriend, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We've been together for almost 3 years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just stated the truth. I expected something, anything. An awkward silence, a correction, some kind of reaction. But what I got was something else entirely. Vanessa laughed. It wasn't a nervous or uncomfortable laugh. It was a genuine, dismissive laugh. And then she said something that is still hard for me to think about. We're just friends, don't get confused. It felt like a punch to the gut, but she wasn't done. She turned slightly toward Spencer, still smiling. You see how some fans get. They invent these stories about the actors they admire. There was a second of silence, and then Spencer let out a loud, confident laugh, as if he found the whole thing genuinely amusing. He stepped closer and put his hand on my shoulder. It was meant to look friendly, but it was anything but. Geez, man, he said, don't be so pathetic. I could feel the pressure of his hand, like he was marking his territory. The lady doesn't want you here, he continued. Do us all a favor and go grab some drinks. Maybe then she'll give you a shot. I don't remember what my face looked like in that moment. What I do remember perfectly is the sound of their laughter. His and Vanessa's. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that nobody else said a word. Some people glanced over, others just looked away, but no one intervened. I didn't respond either. I didn't argue, I didn't react. I just stood there for a few more seconds, processing it all, and then I walked away. I didn't say anything as I left. I didn't look back. I didn't search for one last sign that it had all been a misunderstanding, because deep down, I already knew it wasn't. I left Jenna's house without saying goodbye. The sounds of the party faded behind me as I walked out to the street. The cool night air hit me, but it wasn't enough to snap me out of my daze. It was strange, I didn't feel rage. It was something colder, more muted, as if my brain was reorganizing everything in real time. I walked to my car, each step feeling automatic. I opened the door, got in, closed it, and just sat there without starting the engine. I didn't move, just stared straight ahead, replaying every moment in my head. He's a friend. We're just friends. Fans get obsessed. Each phrase landed with more weight in the silence of the car. After a few minutes, I started the car and drove home. The drive is a blur. I don't remember the traffic lights, the other cars, or if the radio was on. I only remember pulling into my driveway. I went inside, and everything was exactly as I had left it. Everything was in its place, the same order, the same quiet, but it no longer felt the same. I shut the door, dropped my keys on the table, and the silence of the house enveloped me. That's when it all hit me. I walked to the living room, collapsed onto the couch, and for the first time in a long time, I let it all out. At first, it was a choked, quiet cry, as if even then, it was hard for me to accept what I was feeling. But then I couldn't hold it back anymore. Everything came pouring out. The humiliation, the years of built-up frustration, the feeling of being discarded in front of everyone. 3 years. 3 years reduced to a friend. 3 years erased with a laugh. I buried my face in my hands, trying to calm down, but it was no use, because deep down, I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't just about tonight. Tonight was just the breaking point, the moment when nothing could be denied any longer. Everything that came before, the signs, the doubts I'd pushed aside, it all fit together now. And the hardest part wasn't what Vanessa did. It was realizing how long I had allowed it, how much I had ignored, how much I had justified. I sat there in the dark, not knowing how much time had passed. I stayed in the house, completely alone, in a silence that felt heavy. Gradually, I calmed down enough to breathe somewhat normally. But even then, something inside me had shifted. A clear idea had formed, a certainty I didn't have before. What happened tonight wasn't just going to be forgotten. Not after everything. Not after what she did. Vanessa didn't come home that night. At first, I thought maybe she'd arrive late. It wasn't unusual for her to stay out longer at social events, but this time felt different. There was something about what had happened that made it hard to imagine her just walking back in as if everything was normal. Still, at some point, exhaustion took over. I don't remember when I fell asleep, only that I was still on the couch, my mind racing, going over every detail until it all went dark. When I woke up, the house was completely silent. Morning light was streaming through the windows, and for a few seconds, everything felt normal. That false sense of peace before reality comes crashing back down. I sat up slowly, my body aching, the way it does after crying and sleeping poorly. And then I heard it, a noise from the kitchen. I got up immediately and walked in that direction. When I entered the kitchen, I saw her. Vanessa was standing at the stove, making breakfast as if nothing had happened, as if the previous night didn't exist. The anger flared up inside me instantly. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice came out colder than I had intended. She turned around, perfectly calm. "I'm making breakfast." She said it as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. That was all it took for something inside me to finally snap. "What about Spencer?" I said. "I figured you would have stayed with him. You chose him, right?" Vanessa rolled her eyes, as if it annoyed her to have to explain something so obvious. "Relax, don't be so dramatic. It was a professional thing, nothing more. I'm sorry, okay?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her. But she kept talking, convinced that her words could fix this. "He has connections in the industry," she added. I had to make a good impression, seem available. There was a short silence, and without thinking, I said, "So you went home with him?" Vanessa let out a sigh as if the question were absurd. "If it makes you feel any better, we talked for a few more minutes, and then he left. He wasn't interested." Happy. I felt no relief hearing that. On the contrary, it made everything feel worse, more humiliating, more real. The anger surged. "Get out," I told her. She frowned. "Can you stop with the drama already?" she replied. "Look, I made you breakfast." She took a small step toward me, as if nothing was out of place, and that was what set everything off. Without thinking, I grabbed the plate from the counter and threw it on the floor. The sound was sharp and loud as the plate shattered into pieces, scattering food everywhere. Vanessa jumped back, stunned. "What is wrong with you? I told you to get out." This time, my voice wasn't cold, it was firm. Her tone shifted immediately. "Babe, calm down," she said softly. "It was just a work thing. It wasn't personal." That phrase was worse than anything else she could have said. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked to the bedroom. I opened the closet, grabbed an armful of her clothes, and went back to the living room. Without hesitating, I opened the front door and threw them out onto the lawn. The clothes landed in a messy pile on the grass. "I want nothing to do with you. Get out of my house." Vanessa stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to process what was happening. "Babe, we can fix this. Don't do this," she pleaded. "I have nowhere else to go. I don't have any money." I looked straight at her, and in that moment, I remembered her words from the night before. "We're just friends, right?" I shot back. "So we're friends. And friends don't financially support each other. Friends don't pay for everything." She fell silent. I could see her mind working, trying to find a way to spin the situation. "Just calm down," she said finally. "At the next party, I'll tell Spencer that you're my boyfriend." I let out a short, humorless laugh. While she was talking, I went back to the bedroom, grabbed more of her things, and threw them out onto the lawn. "We are nothing," I told her. "We aren't anything anymore. I am sick of your flirting and your humiliations. I don't want a partner like you. Get out." I kept bringing her things out, clothes, shoes, makeup, everything I could find. Vanessa started to cry. "Please, don't do this to me. You are the love of my life. I want to marry you. I want to have kids with you." I stopped for a moment and looked at her. "For what?" I replied. "So you can deny them, too, when it's not convenient for your career. Leave. I don't want to see you again." She didn't move. She just stood there, as if she couldn't accept that this was real. But my mind was made up. I took her by the arm and guided her toward the door. Not roughly, but with a firmness that left no room for argument. "I told you to leave." By then, the commotion had attracted attention. A few neighbors had come out onto their porches, watching from a distance without getting involved. Outside, her belongings were strewn across my front yard. An older neighbor walked over and quietly helped her gather a few things. I didn't do anything. I just stood there. I didn't feel guilt in that moment, only a profound sense of exhaustion. Vanessa kept looking at me as she picked up her things, as if hoping I would change my mind, but I didn't. I said nothing else. After a few minutes, she collected what she could carry and walked away. That was the last time I saw her in person. After that day, there were no calls, no texts, no real attempts to get back in touch. Just silence. Time passed, and I heard nothing from her until, months later, I came across her profile on social media. She had changed. She was no longer pursuing acting or involved in any significant projects. From what I could see, she was working at a spa as a massage therapist. I don't know how she ended up there. I don't know the details of what happened in her life after she left. And honestly, I don't care. Because what happened that night was more than enough to close that chapter for good. 3 years, all over in a single night. Comment. What really stands out to me in this story is the painful but powerful moment of choosing yourself. It's a tough reminder that setting clear boundaries isn't about controlling others, but about respecting yourself. Your worth is non-negotiable, and you should never have to audition for a place in someone's life. Sometimes we ignore the small signs, hoping things will change on their own. But true growth begins when we take responsibility for our own peace. Leaving a situation that consistently hurts you isn't an act of failure. It is a profound act of self-care. The road to healing can be lonely at first, but it leads to a place of genuine peace. Always remember to be kind to yourself during this process. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not ones where you have to constantly prove your existence. I hope you always choose the path that honors your heart. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.